Hey guys, welcome this morning. We're glad you're here. As people kind of straggle in, that'll be good. Hey, I want to give you two quick announcements. One, this week is we're doing Reach Week, so there is a group, a church from Louisiana with there's about 40 people up here, and we're like their mission project for the week. And so we're going to be doing all kinds of stuff. Some of the stuff we're going to be doing is we'll be working with the seniors over at the Needmore Center, and we're going to be taking care of about 10 different yards in the neighborhood in the area this week. And so if you're available from 10:30 to 3 and you want to hang out with seniors or you want to do some yard work and some other stuff I'm going to let you know about, then just let us know when you're going to be here, and we'll find some work for you to do. So after the service today, we have lunch. We got burgers. We have burgers and just a bunch of desserts. So that's good. That's my favorite part. So and there are so many announcements about what's coming up in the next few months, and I will go over all those during lunch. So stick around. Let's pray, and then we'll do some singing. Dear God, thank you so much for today. Thank you for a place to come and worship. Thank you for summer when things slow down a little bit and we can just find some space to enjoy. God, we just welcome your spirit in the room today. God, we just ask that you show up in the songs that we sing and in the scripture that we read. And just let us learn from you today and worship you. We ask that you receive our praises. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
You guys go ahead and stand as we begin worship. I want to start off with Romans chapter 5, just a few verses that I've clinged to this week. It says, "Therefore, since we have been made right in God's sight by faith, we have peace with God because of what Jesus Christ, our Lord, has done for us. Because of our faith, Christ has brought us into this place of undeserved privilege where we now stand, and we confidently and joyfully look forward to sharing God's glory." It's a miracle to me that we can have faith in the grace of God and have peace with God, and our identity can be rooted in knowing that we're a child of God and we can walk free from the heaviness of life. And so with that, let's worship.
Natural love. Sing this with me. The moon and stars they wept, the morning sun was done, the Savior of the world was fallen. His body on the cross, His blood poured out for us, the weight of every curse upon Him. One final breath He gave, as heaven looked away. The Son of God was laid in darkness, the battle in the grave, the war on death was waged, the power of hell forever broken. One final breath. One final breath. Sing the ground. The ground began to shake, the soul was rolled away. His perfect love could not be overcome. Now death, where is your sting? Our resurrected King has rendered you defeated. Forever He is glorified. Forever He is lifted high. Forever He is risen. He is alive. He is alive now forever. Forever He is glorified. Forever He is lifted high. Forever He is risen. He is alive. He is alive. The ground began to shake, the soul was rolled away. His perfect love cannot be overcome. Now death, where is your sting? Our resurrected King has rendered you defeated. Forever He is glorified. Forever He is lifted high. Forever He is risen. He is alive. He is alive. He is alive. He is alive. Oh, as we sing hallelujah, we sing hallelujah, we sing hallelujah. The Lamb is overcome. We sing hallelujah. We sing hallelujah. We sing hallelujah. The Lamb is overcome. We sing hallelujah. We sing hallelujah. We sing hallelujah. The Lamb is overcome. We sing hallelujah. We sing hallelujah. We sing hallelujah. The Lamb has overcome. 'Cause we sing hallelujah. just thank you that we gathered this morning because you are alive. God, there'd just be no reason for us to gather if you weren't alive. And so this morning we proclaim that you are alive. And God, we just say thank you that you are alive. God, that you didn't stay in the grave. God, you chose to leave the grave for us. And so God, we just thank you for that love. We just thank you for the cross. We thank you for your death and your resurrection, Jesus. And we love you. In your name I pray,
Amen. Thank you, guys. Hey, so we began a new series this past week on the book of Job. And, this on? Yeah. Is this sound on? Okay. So we began a series on the book of Job, and we're using Job to cover some different issues, some different topics. And everybody sat on this side of the church this morning. I feel like I'm going to be talking sideways all day. So we're looking at some different issues, and today we're looking we're talking really about mental health, and we're talking about suicide, and so, some real light, airy stuff, but this just stuff that is a part of our society, and it's one of these things, this could be kind of a heavier topic, and so I was talking with Molly earlier this week. I was like, it'd be nice to open up with some jokes, and she's like, you don't joke about mental health, and I was like, but and she's like, you don't joke about anxiety or depression, right? And suicide is definitely off the table. And I was like, all right, okay, it's going to be serious. And then the next day she posts this video on Facebook, and I'm like, this is perfect. And so in this video, what you're going to see is a person. It's called Me and Anxiety, and so it's a person, and they're talking to their anxiety, which is this darker version of herself. I want you to go ahead and watch it and just see if you can relate to anything in this video.
It's time to wake up. We've got a lot to do today. We're not going to get any of it done, though. But we will spend a lot of time obsessing about it. Awesome. Come on. Can't wait.
Mommy, can I have a sleepover at Jenny's?
Let's have some breakfast first. But I don't see why not.
Whoa.
No. What? Have you not seen Chris Hansen, To Catch a Predator? It's going to end up on Dateline. You know what? Maybe next week. Don't answer that. Why? It's Jenna. She's going to want you to go do something. And then you're going to have to put pants on. Ew. It's a big plan. This is too much. What? All of it. Everything. I'm not even doing anything. It's too much. You're right. It's too much. You're right. Here, stomach hurts. No, it doesn't. Yeah, it does. No, it doesn't. You feel that? Our appendix is probably going to burst any second now. Let me just Google it really quick. Yes, I would love to hang out sometime. You're a liar. Yeah, that sounds good. No, it doesn't. Okay, great. I'll talk to you soon. No, you won't. Bye-bye. You'll never talk to her again. Will you please shut up? Hi. She hates you. What? She's laughing at your pants right now. I knew I shouldn't have worn these. Grab her money. I have it in my purse. No, I mean get it in your hand. Why? I don't know. Do you want to hold up the whole entire line and look like an idiot while fumbling for your change? That's a good point. Hey, please, I'm tired. I really want to sleep. I thought you were going to go on a diet today. Why'd you eat all those tacos? Dumb. You gotta go grocery shopping tomorrow, but you have to put gas in the car first. Which sucks, because your debit card hasn't been working lately, so I don't really know what you're gonna do. Probably just freak out and stress about it. Why don't you stay awake for a couple more hours and think about that? I will kill you. I'll see you tomorrow.
I'll see you tomorrow. Alright. Can anybody relate to that?
Yes.
Yeah.
My gosh, I can't, the timing of this message, this has been on the calendar for months, but it's not lost on me this week. I have about 20 too many things going on in my mind right now. See, we had planned to spread a lot of stuff out, and then it just the calendar pushed it all together. And so, I've got 40 people coming this next week that I have to have stuff planned for them to do. And then me and Molly were supposed to close on a house 2 weeks ago, and the closing got pushed to this week while all these people are here. It was supposed to be Monday, which would be great because they get here on Tuesday and they get help, but now it's pushed to Thursday. which means that things are really crunched, and my parents are coming in town, and they were supposed to be here Monday through Thursday, and so that means they were going to like see us close on the house and like see it for like 20 minutes, and then they were going to leave. And you know, it's just all these things. We signed a new lease this past week on New Space down the way for a table community. I'll tell you more about that at supper. And then Stevie got glasses this week, which they're so cute, but like glasses on a 2-year-old is like enough stress for all by itself. And so I've felt this week. I'm not normally somebody that deals with a lot of anxiety, but like my brain has been running on too many amps for too long, and I'm feeling it today. But this is all stuff that we all deal with. I mean, we all have these kind of things, these mental health issues in our lives, and but there's still like a stigma around it. And so part of what we're going to talk about today is how do we get rid of that stigma. You talk about things like anxiety and depression often leads to suicidal thoughts and to suicide, and suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in America. Like the stuff in front of suicide is like diabetes and cancer. I mean, it's like, it's up there. 3,000 more people die a year from suicide than die by car crashes. So, I mean, it's really remarkable. And mental health is, it's a biological thing, but it's very much a social thing as well. And so it's tied to our society, it's rooted in our culture as well. You know, America tends to be kind of like, it tends to represent white culture, and you know, white people are 3 times more likely to die by suicide than black people in our country. Right? So it's a societal thing. It's rooted. You know, we live in kind of like a hyper stoic society, right? You gotta present yourself well at all times. You know, you gotta hold it together on the outside. On the inside, you may be a complete mess, right? But we gotta present ourselves well. Actually, you look at suicides, and white men, middle-aged men, lead. So of white suicides, about 70% of them are men in their 40s and 50s. Right? So you think of this as like a teenage problem, but it's really a much bigger thing than that, and it's tied to really the way our society works, and there's so many studies that say that there's so many detrimental effects to not properly dealing with our mental health issues, but it is what it is, and so we need to talk about it. You know, recently there was Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade. They both died by suicide recently, and it was like in the same week, and that conversation just exploded online again. And it seems like that it can be like almost a trendy topic at times, but it's such an ongoing thing. Like it's going to make laps. It's going to come back around. We're going to see it again and again, and sometimes it gets hijacked for political reasons, but it's an important conversation to have nonetheless, because as a church, we're called to take care of people. And there are people within our church and people outside of our church that deal with this. But there's lots of misconceptions when it comes to mental health, depression, suicide, these types of things. There's all kind of misconceptions. So I want to read some statistics just so you can understand like how normal this struggle is for people to have. About 1 in 5 adults suffer from a mental illness in the U.S. in a given year. So 20% of the population within any year. Not within a lifetime. Over a lifetime, most everybody's going to deal with something. But within a given year, 1 out of 5 adults. The same is true of teenagers, 13 to 18, that they are going to experience some kind of severe mental disorder during that period. About 7% of adults, it's about 16 million of us, have at least one major depressive episode in the past year. And 18% of adults suffer from an anxiety disorder within a given year. And then about 50% of adults who have any kind of substance abuse problem, whether that's alcohol or drugs or what have you, that about half of those people, there is a co-occurring mental illness that's going on at the same time. And so there's also like some consequences that come with this. They estimate that in America, we lose about $193 billion in earnings a year. That's a lot of money. And you know, if you deal with mental illness, there's all kind of increased other risk, health risks that come along with it. And so that's a problem. Suicide, I said, is the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S. It's actually the 2nd leading cause of people under the age of 24. So it's a really big thing. About 90% of children who die by suicide have a mental health condition as well. And about 20 veterans die each day by suicide. So we're looking at the book of Job, and Job is really our guide. Remember I told you Job's kind of a different book. It's not like a book of wisdom you go to and you just like pull little nuggets out that are helpful. It's written like a play. It's written to be dramatic. It's written for you to like relate to the characters as they go through these different things. And give you kind of, like, I can relate because I've been in that place, but it also kind of gives you this 20,000 foot view where you can kind of see all that's going on at the same time. And so you can understand kind of the misconceptions and the proper conceptions that they have of themselves and of God and all these things. And I told you this is a good series for taking notes. And because Job is so narrative driven, I'm trying to tie it to issues that are very real life and very practical. And so this is one of those sermons where there's a lot of research that went into it beyond just studying the scripture. And it's kind of one of those things that it's a very nuanced conversation. So, and I'm not a healthcare professional, so all the edges may not be perfectly polished, but as a church it's something that we need to talk about because it's a reality. And I've never suffered from a diagnosable mental illness. I would say there's probably one time I went through what you would call seasonal depression. But I kind of came out of that on the other side. It lifted and went on. But we all know people that deal with anxiety, that deal with depression. If you think you don't know somebody, we're like, just hang out here long enough. I can introduce you to some people. So everybody with mental illness, please raise your hand. No, I'm just kidding. So that is the opposite of what we're trying to do today. But we all know somebody, so it's a reality, okay? And Job is somebody that God like brags on. He says like he's my guy, he's my proud creation. Like he says, this is what humanity should look like. And he doesn't really come off of that. He doesn't really come off of that while he is throughout the story. While Job is struggling with all this stuff, he still sees Job as his prized creation. And yet Job, there are clear signs that he's dealing with anxiety and depression and some mental illness, and he even wishes for death at some point. So mental health issues, now I do think they're connected to spiritual health. That is definitely a part of it as a church, but it's something much bigger than just that. And so it's important that you understand that people of faith, this is a slide, Molly. People of faith do have mental health issues and engage in suicidal behavior. Right? You can be loved by God, you can love God, and you can still have these issues. The idea that a strong faith will somehow prevent someone from going through mental health struggles or having suicidal thoughts is a myth. I do believe that spirituality and religious practice and all those things that can be healthy for getting better and maintaining your wellness, but things like depression, there's a biological factor that is at play, and those are the types of things that contribute to suicidality. And so it's a disorder of the brain most of the time. It's not a lack of faith. Okay, and so as we look at Job, Job in this chapter we're going to look at today, he directs his speech toward God, and he talks about really the human condition as a whole. He doesn't just talk about his own situation. He really expresses the existential crisis that we all go through at some point. And so he moves from a place, we talked about how Job lost everything, and he moves from a place of grieving to a place of depression, which is, they're very similar, but they're different. We'll talk about the difference. And he kind of goes through this downward psychological spiral that we'll see, and he actually wishes for death at one point. And so I want to begin there, because one of the things I want us to know about is, I told you, this is a good place to take notes, right? We want to talk about the signs of suicide so that you know what they are, because mental illness and mental health issues are so common within our society. So I want to give you a few signs of suicide so that you know what they are, and you'll be prepared to take care of people well. So the signs of suicide. The interpersonal psychological theory of suicidal behavior, written by Thomas Joyner. He's out of Florida State University. He says an individual will not die by suicide unless they both have the desire to and the capability to. And so he says there's some signs that you can look for, and we actually see them in Job. In Job 7:20 it says this. It says, "If I have sinned, what have I done to you? You who see everything we do, why have you made me your target? Have I become a burden to you?" And so the first sign is perceived burdensomeness, which is kind of a hard word to say, burdensomeness. It's a burdensomeness word. But it's this sense that I am a burden to others around me. So this is one of the signs. Do I feel like I am weighing other people down around me? The second sign is low belonging, a sense of social alienation. Listen to Job 19. It says, "He has alienated my family from me. My acquaintances are completely estranged from me. My relatives have gone away. My closest friends have forgotten me. My guests and my female servants count me a foreigner. They look at me, on me as a stranger." So there's a sense of social alienation there. And if you think about these things, they like a healthy mind, these things really don't fit together very well. It's like, how can I be a burden to someone and also like not be a part of their life at the same time? If I'm alienated from them, how could I possibly be weighing them down? And yet, in this mental health struggle, you see these signs. And then the third one is simply the acquired ability to enact lethal self-injury. So you should learn these, you should memorize these. And we'll see in the text today that Job kind of begins at one place and he reaches a place where he actually desires his life to end. And so this theory states that if someone perceives himself to be a burden long enough and they feel like they are alienated from other people, that eventually they will reach a point where they think that they wish to end their life. And so there's some things the church can do to remove the stigma and to build understanding. One thing we can do is exactly what we're doing right now, which is just talk about it. Read the statistics. Just share how common it is. This is it's not a sin. It's just a struggle that people go through, and it's a very common struggle. So it doesn't make you abnormal to struggle. We all struggle, and this is just a common struggle that we have. And mental health issues, they can be kind of distressing and isolating enough on their own. But if we don't talk about it, then it feels like I need to keep it a secret, and so it just makes the problem bigger than it really is. And if you do struggle with mental health issues, one of the greatest things you can do to help other people is to talk about your own issue, because which requires you to be very brave. But in your vulnerability, you actually make it okay for other people to talk about it. That's why it's really important in groups. Like our prayer request time, there needs to be the ability, we need to be comfortable enough to say that, hey, I struggle with anxiety, I struggle with depression, I have suicidal thoughts. We need to be able to do that because it opens up the room and the conversation for everybody. And actually, if you're part of a group, like that happens in our groups. And so I'm very proud of our groups for being able to talk about these things. And we're going to look at Job chapter 14. Now remember, Job is not written to prescribe life remedies, right? It is written so that we can relate to the characters. And so in Job chapter 14, it begins like this. "How frail is humanity, how short is life, how full of trouble. We blossom like a flower, then wither. Like a passing shadow, we quickly disappear. Must you keep an eye on such a frail creature and demand an accounting of me? Who can bring purity out of an impure person? No one." So this is Job talking, right? His tone is very melancholy. His tone is very, life is short, life is meaningless, life is painful. If you were to talk to somebody that talked like this, you would say that Job is depressed. Yeah, is depressed, right? And I think it's important because Job moves from grief to depression. I think it's important to understand the differences. We're actually going to talk about what it means to grieve properly and to walk with people through grief next week. But these things can look very similar. So I want to kind of separate them out a little bit, okay? Because they have a lot of the same symptoms, okay? If you're grieving or depressed, you can experience intense sadness, things like sleep loss, insomnia, weight loss, you lose your appetite. A lot of the physical manifestations look the same. They look remarkably similar. The difference with grief is grief you may never completely get over grief, but it will dissipate over time. It will get better, and it's usually triggered by something. And later on, you know, you'll see an image or a picture of somebody. You'll go to an old restaurant or something. You remember something, and then all of a sudden it comes back in a wave. But depression is kind of there. You know, it's just kind of there with you. It travels with you. It gets lighter. It gets heavier, but it's around. You know. And so that's important, okay? With depression, you can have things like feelings of guilt that come with depression. Now, with grief, you may have guilt, but it's usually associated with a loss. It's not as much. You're not a burden on other people. That's not the guilt that you're feeling. And with depression, sometimes there are thoughts of suicide that are accompanied with that. Wherein with grief, if you lose somebody, you may say, "I can't wait to be with them one day in heaven." But that's a different thing. Like, I can wait to get there. Okay? But depression and suicidal thoughts is something differently. Depression, there's also a preoccupation with worthlessness, like my value as a person. Whereas grief doesn't so much, it doesn't really erode your self-confidence. And so with depression, there can be just these really prolonged periods of time where you really struggle to find the motivation just to do day-to-day stuff. I mean, sometimes it's just hard to get out of bed. And so both grief and depression are normal, atypical experiences in life. And so we'll speak more on grief next week. But depression isn't what the church always makes it out to be. Okay? It's sometimes sometimes the church makes it out to be something it isn't, right? Depression, anxiety, it's not a character defect, okay? It's not a spiritual disorder. It's not an emotional dysfunction. It's definitely not a choice, okay? That's probably one of the most important things you need to understand when it comes to anxiety or depression. It's not a choice. You know, sometimes we quote the Bible and we say, like, be anxious in nothing. It's like, that's like the least helpful verse to somebody who actually deals with anxiety. Asking somebody to, like, try not to be depressed is kind of like, somebody who's been, like, shot, has, like, a gun wound, and they're like, could you please stop bleeding? Like, this is not working out, right? And so there's this false attitude that somehow, like, if you just had enough faith, then you could just pull yourself out of it. But this is really just not the way that it works. So depression isn't your fault, and it's something that normal people go through. And so having faith in God's ability in His healing ability is important, and personal faith can help ease depression, right? But sometimes there is a need for medical and psychiatric treatment, and so to deny somebody that with a mental illness is kind of it's rooted in biology, and so it's kind of like denying somebody with any illness the right to go to a doctor. And so the only difference is, like, we see one manifested on the outside and the other we can't really see. And so that's the difference. You know, verse 4, Job says, how can you bring purity out of an impure person? He says, who can? And he says, no one. Right? I think it's important to understand this, that Job misses in the midst of his pain, is that mental illness, mental struggles are not a sin. Mental illness is not a sin, right? So you may have past sins, physical abuse, substance abuse, neglect. Those things may contribute to depression, okay? But they are separate from that, right? And depression may spur some of those things on as coping mechanisms, right? You think about homeless people. I don't know the statistic off my head, but a large percentage of homeless people have a mental illness. But a lot of times you look at them and you're like, you're on the street because you're a drug addict, you're on the street because you're an alcoholic. But the reality is that's a coping mechanism, and that vice itself may be sinful behavior, but there's an underlying mental health issue that is really just a common struggle that hasn't been addressed. And so you're not a sinner for simply experiencing a mental health issue. And so what happens when mental health is treated like an unconfessed sin, you know, like it's been unaddressed in your life, what happens is you feel alienated when that's the way you were treated. Which, if you remember, social alienation is one of the signs of suicide anyways, and so if a depressed person is feeling that, all you're doing is exacerbating the problem. Okay? And so depressed people are really good at hiding it. They're really good at hiding it. You know, even from doctors, because there's a stigma attached to the illness. but viewing it as a sin itself prevents individuals from seeking treatment, and also encourages the unhealthy behavior of the different coping mechanisms that are there. So in verse 5, Job continues, he says, "You have decided the length of our lives." He's talking to God here. "You know the months we will live, and we are not given a minute longer. So leave us alone and let us rest. We are like hired workers, so let us finish our work in peace. Even a tree has more hope. If it is cut down, it will sprout again and grow new branches. If it has roots, if the roots have grown old in the earth and the stump decays at the scent of water, it will bud and sprout again like a new seedling. But when people die, their strength is gone. They breathe their last, and then where are they?" So you look at Job's emotional state. It started to deteriorate here. So healthy Job, he delights in God. In fact, the Bible says that God's friendship hovered over Job's tent. But right now, Job, he doesn't feel close to God at all, right? There's a social and emotional distance from God, okay? Which is the story your mind is telling you if you're going through a season of depression or great anxiety, right? Your brain is actually working against you. It's telling you a narrative that isn't true. You know, Job says he pictures humans as like hired laborers, like God is the taskmaster, right? This isn't a friend that is close to me. God's up there. He's a taskmaster. God, you just let me do my work and then let me go, right? Everything is driven by fear and isolation. And a lot of times as a church, you see somebody going through something like this, and our impulse is like, okay, I want to fix this. Like, I want to make it better. But the church's job is not to fix people, especially not to fix their struggles. It's really not even to fix their sins, right? It's Jesus' job to do those things. And so, and the way Jesus does it is actually the way that we're supposed to do it. Jesus does that through love. And so we're called as a church not to fix people, but to love people, to show them that they care, right? If somebody feels socially alienated, well, the best thing we can do is gather around them and to be their friends. If they feel like they're a burden, the best thing we can do is show them that they're not weighing the group down, that they're a part of it, that we couldn't do it without them. Verse 11, it says, "As water evaporates from a lake and a river disappears in drought, people are laid to rest and do not rise again. Until the heavens are no more, they will not wake up nor be roused from their sleep." So this is Job's perspective here, right? Job believes, so I think it's important to understand that Job is one of the oldest books in the Bible. So there's theology that is in the New Testament that Job doesn't have, okay? And so Job doesn't believe in really life after death, right? So there's no hope of being renewed after death. So death is only like the end of life, and for him, the end of pain, right? The grave is a place of no return. So, why would Job want to go there unless his life was just filled with pain? And so he doesn't really have the doctrine of resurrection. There's like not a heaven waiting for him. There's not like a final resurrection coming. His only hope is that God kind of intervenes before he dies, and then if he makes life better, that's good. But if he's not going to do that, it'd be better just to hurry up. And so in verse 13, you see this really dark shift in Job's dialogue. He says, "I wish you would hide me in the grave and forget me there until your anger has passed. But mark your calendar and think of me again." So there's that dark shift where Job starts wishing for death, right? In Job's previous speeches, he actually speaks poorly of the grave, right? Because their concept is not really heaven and hell; it's more what they call Sheol. And Sheol is it's not really it's a place of peace. So there's not pain and suffering, that's gone, but there's not really joy either. So it's just kind of a semi-existence, right? And so in order for Job to find a semblance of hope here, he has to twist his image of the grave into a positive light. Okay, he has to tell himself a different story about the grave. That maybe, just maybe, in the recesses of Sheol, then I can hide from God's anger there. Maybe, just maybe, in the grave I can hide and I won't feel pain anymore. And so this is important for you to know. That people who talk about suicide are at a much greater risk of suicide. And so it doesn't. There's kind of this temptation when people say things like that to not take them seriously or to not wade into those water because it's really uncomfortable. And even if they're joking, even if they're not serious, or that they say they are, and then later you find out different. Like, I would rather take the risk of of getting it wrong than risk actually losing the person. So you should take serious any indication of suicide. And so the reason we do that is really because Jesus saves lives, right? That's what Jesus does. Jesus is interested in saving lives. And we are the church. We're the body of church, which means we embody the person of Christ with everyone that we meet. That means we welcome them in. We keep them from feeling isolated. We let them know that they are not a burden to us. It's our pleasure to walk through life with them and their struggle, and we would hope that they would do the same with us. And so Jesus goes community healing and bringing hope to people, and we're supposed to do the same. And that's because saving lives is a priority for Jesus. It should be a priority for us. And so the start of that is to make this a place where we break that stigma, where which can be slow, painful work, but we make it okay to be not okay. That we all have struggles, and if yours is a mental health issue, that's okay. You don't have to hide that. You can be open about that here, and through that, if you're open about your struggle, you actually help other people, and together you actually save lives and improve the quality of life for people. So as we look at next steps, the first one is just to remove the stigma, okay? Make groups especially a place where we talk about this, where if this is something you struggle with, please come forward and say, hey, I'm dealing with a lot of anxiety, I'm dealing with depression, it could be some other mental health issue, it could be having suicidal thoughts. Like, let us rally around you, and as a group, we don't judge people for that. We don't see it as a sin here. 2 is that if you struggle, please tell somebody and seek professional help if you feel like you're able to. Okay? If you struggle, it's okay. We don't, it's not like a sin, so we don't think we can treat it medically here. Okay? So if you think that I need a counselor, I need medication, I need to see a doctor, we encourage that. Okay? And in fact, we'll help you get there. The third thing is this. Just memorize the signs of suicide. Okay? Perceived burdensomeness. Okay? Low belonging, social alienation, and the acquired ability to enact lethal self-injury. If you see these things in somebody, please do all you can to help them out. I'm going to close today. You guys can go ahead and come up here. By reading a post that my brother Virgil wrote. Now, I read something he wrote at Easter, and I just bawled the whole time. So I hope that doesn't happen today. But he wrote this post on Facebook, and he's just got such a beautiful way of using words. And he wrote this after Anthony Bourdain died by suicide. And so it's just it's really it really embodies the way the church should treat people who have mental health issues. So here it goes. In the wake of 2 celebrity deaths by suicide, I'm seeing a lot of posts of people telling everybody that they're there to talk if they need it. That's good, but that's only a start. There are a lot of factors that go into suicide. Some are impulsive acts to avoid immediate pain and even justice, but others are the result of physical and psychological processes that we still have trouble understanding. People who are struggling with a strong mental illness are often unable to reach out, not because their mouths don't work, but because their brains are working against them. They're dealing with the loss of motivation, the loss of color in their lives. Their thought process are actively sabotaging them, telling them they are worthless or too much work or even an active burden for everyone they know. It's not just bad thoughts, it's an illness. So if you suspect someone is having a difficult time because they often telegraph it, ask. Don't just quietly worry. Ask if they need to see a professional about their mental state. If they say yes, but won't make the phone call, then you make the phone call and set the appointment. Drive them to the doctor if you have to. Take them to the pharmacy and pay for their medicine. Make sure they take it. And if you think they're in immediate danger and you're not there, call a friend or even call law enforcement and have them make a welfare check. Sometimes an ear is all someone needs, but sometimes they need someone to give them a shove to keep living. So be compassionate in everything, but be vigilant. Here's the other side of it. If someone you know has died by suicide, it's not your fault. They were sick, but it was also their actions that ended their lives, not yours. Sometimes we miss things, and sometimes we don't have a clue. So mourn, be angry, forgive, rest, say their names, carry them with you, remember them, and tell their stories. And yes, if you're out there and you do need an ear, I'm here. We are here. No matter who you are, there's someone who would rather take a call and hear that you're not okay than take a call to hear that they'll never hear from you again. Let's pray. Dear God, we thank you for your son Jesus. We thank you for his healing and calming presence. We thank you that you're a God that is here with us in the midst of our struggles. God, we know that these are struggles that are of people that are within our church and outside of our church. God, we pray that we would be the type of community that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to talk about it. It doesn't make people abnormal. No, it's just normal people, and we all have struggles, and some of our struggles are hidden. And I just ask that we would be a place where those hidden struggles can come to light. We love you. Amen.
Would you guys stand with us as we continue to worship?
There is strength within the sorrow. There is beauty in our tears. And you meet us in our morning with a love that casts out fear. You are working in our waiting, sanctifying us. When beyond our understanding, you're teaching us to trust you. Your plans are still to prosper. You have not forgotten us. You're with us in the fire and the flame. Faithful forever, perfect in love. You are sovereign over. This is how I fight my battles. 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 Oh, this is how I fight my battles. 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 Living up like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. Living up like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. Living up like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. Living up like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. And this is how I fight my battles. 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 Even up like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. Even up like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. Even up like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. Even up like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. Only you, only you. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. Living up like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. Living up like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. Living up like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. Living up like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. This is how I fight my battle. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. Yeah, God, as we just continue this time of giving, God, that we just give back to you, God, just out of a joyful heart this morning, God. We love you. Amen. He is jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane. I am a tree bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. Sing, he is jealous. And he is jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane. I am a tree bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And oh, how he loves us, oh, how he loves us, how he loves us, Sing, he is jealous, and he is jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane, I am a tree bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And oh, how he loves us, oh, how he loves us, how he loves us, sing it again. And oh, how he loves us, oh, how he loves us, how he loves us, oh, 'cause we are his portion and he is our prize, drawn to redemption by the grace in his eyes. And if grace is an ocean, we're all sinking. So heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss, and my heart turns violently inside of my chest. No, I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about the way. So heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss, and my heart turns violently inside of my chest. No, I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about the way he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, for your love, God. Just knowing that you chose us, God, and literally there's nothing we could ever do that you wouldn't choose us. God, and we just thank you for that. God, we just thank you for this morning. God, we just thank you for what we've learned. God, we just thank you for how you've spoken to each and every one of us in this room this morning. God, in your own unique and special way. And so, God, we just love you, and we just thank you for this time of fellowship that we're about to have. We just thank you for the food, God, that it would just bring great conversations, God. Amen.
All right, just a couple quick announcements. I feel special. I get to use the microphone today. Just a reminder, Reach Week this week, Tuesday through Friday, 10:30 to 3, meet here. And also this week, both of our groups are meeting together, and we'll meet at 6 o'clock here at the church to help and do some stuff with Reach Week. And of course, we can't forget about the lunch, so everyone please stay and have some fruit and burgers and some dessert and learn about some exciting stuff that's coming up for us. So, Table Community, here's it.